Ladies and gentlemen, today we begin the Sankhya part of Kapila's discussion, which is the famous part, right? Kapila is famous as the founder of Sankhya. So now we're going to actually get to the part that is the core of what Sankhya is. Basically, science. And Sankhya means enumerating. Hello, everybody. So let's do it. And at this point in the Bhagavatam, you'll be kind of already familiar with this stuff, so it shouldn't go flying over your head. Definitely, there's going to be some new information, and it's going to be all put together in another way. But this is very similar to in astrology, how you have more than one thing represent one thing. Like you have a planet that represents career, and a house that represents career, and a Varga chart that represents career on purpose, because you need to look at three different indicators to see in what ways they all say the same thing. So similarly, in the Bhagavatam, you'll find topics discussed several times. It's not like they just discuss something once and then don't mention it again. They discuss things several times, and that gives you the opportunity to make sure you understand it correctly, because the first time you heard somebody talk about something, you thought it meant this, but then the second time it gets clear that it doesn't mean that. So they tell it several times. This is going to not be the first time you've heard a lot of this stuff. So Kapila explains. He's going to explain the difference. He wants to help the self not get its thoughts and desires moving towards external things. So he's going to try to clarify what's external and what's not. And that's why he goes into this science of what's what. So he starts by saying that matter is called prakriti. And there's a reason why it's called prakriti. Krit. Kritika? Hi, Johnny. Kritika nakshatra is the same krit in prakriti. Kri means to do. That's what kritika is, the initiator. It's the starter. Prakriti. Pra is like the English prefix pro. Pro means for. So prakriti means for doing. So it's prakriti is the stuff that you can do things with. That's what matter is. In our English New Age parlance, we say matter and spirit. Well, matter actually means stuff that you can do things with. That's what it is in Sanskrit. Prakriti, stuff you can do things with. Or it means creative, actually. Prakriti means for doing, which means creative. Krit also means create. Procreate. Prakrit. Something that can procreate is prakrit. Procreate, what you can do stuff with, you can make stuff with, you can do praja, you can have creativity, things emerge from it, you can have offspring from this. That's what matter is. So he says she's called prakriti because she allows you to create things, she allows you to do things. She's eternal, he says. This is an important point to get. Everything is eternal. It's not just God is eternal and everything else is temporary. Everything is eternal. Because everything is based on consciousness, which has no beginning and end. But just two states. Some things which are eternal aren't. You can be eternal but not constant. So you can fluctuate eternally. And that's what matter does. It fluctuates eternally. So she's eternal and she has two primary states. Balanced and unbalanced. So prakriti, or matter, has two conditions or two states that it can be in. One of them is a balanced state and one of them is an unbalanced state. Now, Kapila is going to explain the two states. He says, when she's in the balanced state, her three component qualities suspend all cause and effects. Her three component qualities. So he's indirectly explaining that she has three component qualities. There's three intrinsic qualities to Prakriti: Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Rajas means the desire, the inspiration to do something. Sattva means the ability to perceive it. And Tamas means the solidity to it, the realness of it, the tutness of it, the touchableness of it. So matter has these three things. It's touchableness that inspires desire, and it's able to be interacted with, Sattva. The touchableness is Tamas, the inspiration and desire is Rajas, and the awareness of it is Sattva. If these three things are balanced, then they will achieve neutrality. They'll neutralize each other. And when there's neutrality, then nothing happens. All the causes and effects are suspended. Everything gets suspended. So Prakriti can have this state, which is called balanced, where the gunas are in equilibrium. And then she generates no distinctly tangible forms. So Prakriti has a state which is like sleeping. You've heard it before described as she's sleeping. When she's sleeping, she's not doing anything, and all of her qualities are neutralizing each other. This state of Prakriti, Kapila says, is also called avyakta, which means unmanifest. This is when Prakriti is asleep or inactive or unmanifest, doesn't produce anything. Still exists, but doesn't produce anything. So you may wonder, how can matter be eternal when there's destructions? Destruction is when Prakriti equalizes itself and becomes inactive. And then it goes into an inactive period. It still exists, but it's in a phase of inactivity. So matter is known as Prakriti, the creative. She's eternal, but she has two states, balanced and unbalanced. When in perfect balance, her three component qualities suspend all causes and effects, and she generates no distinctly tangible forms. So this state of Prakriti is called avyakta, unmanifest. Now the other state, the balanced state, means nothing happens. Then the unbalanced state, if you unbalance, so you see Prakriti as a system is self-contained and doesn't need to do anything. It's if something is introduced into it, that it becomes unsettled. And when it's unsettled, then it starts to bounce into each other and cause interactions, and then things happen. So if unbalanced, then her three component qualities generate tangible causes and effects, the first of which is pradhan, the singularity. Now, from here on out, he's going to be discussing the unbalanced state of Prakriti, which is the one in which we exist and experience things. Any questions so far? It's good stuff, right? I had a green tea latte this morning, and now I feel like hyper. Gotta slow down my breathing. Any questions? Jai Wellenji. You came at a good time. We're going to hear Kapila Sankhya. So I don't know, maybe you just signed on, so I'll just give you a quick recap of what he said. Is Avyakta like Brahma's sleep? Yeah. Yes, actually it corresponds with Brahma's sleep. Yeah, we have the original matcha. Okay, so to review, Kapila is now explaining his Sankhya. And he's explaining what matter is so that the self can see what it's not. Abhishek has a question that's left over from yesterday. Do you see Abhishek's question? Prakriti promises joy. Actually, Prakriti doesn't promise joy. Don't get that wrong. You're putting the blame on Prakriti. She didn't promise you anything. You looked at Prakriti and you imagined that you would find joy there. She didn't do anything. Okay, just get that clear. So we have we promise ourselves joy in Prakriti, but it winds up underwhelming in the end. But still, Purusha keeps itself occupied with it. Why? Is Purusha under the influence of Maya? Yes. But not the Param Purusha. The minute Purusha is under the influence of Maya. It's intoxicated. We explained that yesterday. And really, the situation truly is that it's doing the best that it can. We're doing the best we can. We're pursuing happiness the best that we can. We don't know of any alternative. The Vedas are here to tell us there's a better option than seeking external pleasure, but we don't know anything about that. It's outside of our experience. So that's another reason why people, I see this all the time because I'm a working astrologer, so you deal with a lot of people who have bad relationships. And at first, when you first start, you ask these people, why are you staying in this relationship? After a while, you don't need to ask anymore because you always know that's the same answer. But why are you staying in this relationship? The answer usually is, I can't get out. There's nothing else. There's no option. There's no way out. There's no option. There's no other option. When people don't feel that they have another option, then they stick with whatever option they have, even if it's inferior. Similarly, the Purusha that's enmeshed in prakriti is not aware of any other option, doesn't see any other way out. The Vedas come to say there's an option. All right, back to Sankhya. Sankhya explains that matter is called prakriti because prakriti means what you can do stuff with. Things what allows you to create. Prakriti is eternal. Matter is eternal, just as the soul is eternal. But matter has two states, one manifest and one unmanifest, the balanced and the unbalanced. When prakriti is balanced, it doesn't do anything. But if it gets affected by an outside energy, namely Purusha, then it starts to do stuff. It becomes unbalanced. It has these three qualities to it, which is Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. With Tamas is the touchability of it, Rajas is the desire that the touchability inspires, and Sattva is the experienceableness of it. When she gets unbalanced by some outside force, then those things get agitated. Those three qualities get agitated. They start to interact with each other. When they interact with each other, they start to produce evolutes. Things happen. The first of the evolutes is called pradhan, which is a singularity. Singularity means a single point from which everything else will come. So in Sanskrit, that's called pradhana, the thing that will give everything. It's called pradhana. That's the singularity. The singularity, now Kapila continues. Yeah. Yes, Bardo. But remember, yeah. Okay. The singularity now expands into 24 elements. Remember that Sankhya means counting, so Kapila is going to get pretty into numbers. Slightly. I mean, he likes to count things. So it says singularity expands into 24 elements. Abhishek has a question. When and where is prakriti balanced? When the jivas are not influencing it. Remember, we read about this previously in Bhagavatam. At some point, the jivas get tired of pursuing their karmas. They don't get mukti because they don't have any other ambition, but they just want to stop pursuing their karmas, so they sleep. And at that point, there's no influence on prakriti, and then she becomes balanced. And then when those jivas again regain their energy and their enthusiasm to pursue action, then Vishnu wakes up and unbalances Maya again. Prakriti. Anil wants to know how she will understand things better. Take your time, be patient, and be regular. Just come every day and be regular and try to keep your ears open and try to detect use paper. Use paper. So spit out your thoughts right away. The problem with learning is that you get internal noise in your mind of your own thoughts. If you use paper, and you think those thoughts are really important, and they are to some extent. So paper is useful. You can spit your thought out onto the paper and then get rid of it and go back to listening. That's my suggestion. Okay, so the singularity expands to 24 elements in groups of 5, 5, 4, and 10. All right, so that's the little sutra for what the pradhan does. 24 grouped into 5, 4, 5, 10. Now what are those? What's the 5, 4, 5, 10? The first 5 are the fundamental tangibles. The next, we studied this at length before. The next 5 are the primary qualities of each tangibles, and the 10 are the instruments that interact with them. So, and you remember from previous discussions of this, tamas produces the tangibles, sattva produces the qualities of the tangibles, rajas produces the qualities of the tangibles, and sattva produces the ability to interact with the tangibles. The relationship causes non-equilibrium, Bardo. All right, so what are the tangibles? There's 5 of them. What do you think they are? The 5 tangible things that come out of the singularity. 5 tangible things: solids, liquids, fires, gases, and space. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And then each one has a quality: scent, flavor, sight, touch, and sound. And then the 10 are the instruments that interact with those. That's smelling, tasting, vision, you could say seeing, touching, and hearing. And those are the Venusian senses which come in, and then the martial senses which go out are evacuation, generation, movement, manipulation, and speech. The 4 are components of the inner tool. The 4 are components of the inner tool which functions... the group of 4. There's 5, 5, 10, and 4 to make 24 elements on Sankhya's periodic table. 5 tangible things, 5 qualities of those tangible things, and then 5 ways of perceiving the things and 5 ways of interacting with the things. So 5, 5, and 10 with 2 halves of 5, and then 4 remaining. Those 4 remaining things are components of the inner tool. That's called the antar karna, the inner sense. The inner sense has 4 divisions. We've got 5 outer senses, or 10 outer senses, 5 senses for perceiving and 5 senses for acting, but there's one inner sense, and that inner sense has four components. The 4 components are emotions, thoughts, ambition, and the sentience conduit. That will be manas, buddhi, ahankar, and chitta. Let me show you this table. Let me see if I can get this table on the screen. This. And this. See, here it is. There you go. It's right on top of me. And that makes it small. See it? I'll sit over here for a second. So this is Kapila's periodic table of matter. This is stage 2 of universal evolution. Stage 1 of universal evolution. Stage 0 is a balanced, unmanifest prakriti. And then she becomes activated by consciousness, and she produces something called a pradhan, which is the singularity, the point that will produce everything else. From the singularity, you will get these 24 elements, raw elements, like the atomic building blocks of the universe, which is basically what a periodic table is, right? It's just an extension of Sankhya. So you might say this is the original periodic table. So you could see they're in columns 5, 5, 10, 5, 5, 5, and then this one here is 10, including the 5 and 5, and then 4. So space, winds, fires, liquids, and space creates sound, which has the hearing and speech. Winds creates a sense of touch, which has the sense of touching and the ability for manipulation. And this here may not be related. This final column, the inner tools, may not be related to five ton mantras on the 5 bhutas on the left. But up to the 4th column is all related to these. Fire is perceivable by form in the sense of vision, and it allows movement. Liquid is perceivable by flavor, and it gives that flavor is through the sense of taste, and it allows reproduction of fluids. Then solid stuff is scent, which enables the sense of smelling and has to do with evacuating. And then the inner things, the inner tools are emotion, the inner perceptions. We can perceive emotions in a manas, in a mind. We can perceive thoughts in the buddhi, which is intellect. We perceive ambitions in the ego, which is ahankar. And then we have the very most subtle of all the elements, the 24th, which is chitta, which is the sentience conduit. It's the conduit from the purusha to the prakriti. It's the way that the purusha can insert its consciousness into prakriti. Any questions? Thought and chitta is manas. Thought and chitta is emotion. Manas is emotion. Buddhi is thought. Ahankar is ambition. Chitta is what you call chitta. We don't have really an English word for it. Chitta is the most fundamental mental substance. So it's just the ability for sentience to reside in matter is chitta. So actually the way that you would detect sentience with your senses would be, you would actually not be detecting consciousness directly, you would detect chitta. So sometimes we call chitta heart, but then you can differentiate heart and mind. Chitta can be heart, but heart sounds like a place where emotions. All of the 3 things expand from chitta. Chitta creates ambition, creates thoughts, creates emotion. All right, let's move on. How are we doing with the time? We will move on to see what Kapila says next. Oh, Devahuti says, okay, Prakriti has 2 states. A balanced state, and then an unbalanced state, which produces pradhan, and then produces stuff from pradhan. What makes her switch? What makes her switch from balanced to unbalanced? And Kapila says there's a 25th. No, Chitta is not something like soul. Soul is Purusha. But you see, you may mistake the Chitta for the soul. Oh, maybe that's what you mean, something like soul. Soul. The closest thing to the soul is Chitta. Okay, so now, Heital says sudden thought or fear really comes from Chitta. No. Chitta doesn't do anything. You see, like right now, you're listening to me over the internet, and it's going like over, my signal is going over fiber optic cables and so forth, right? The fiber optic cables are not doing anything. You don't perceive the fiber optic cables at all. Nothing like that. But the fiber optic cables are the basis for our communication. That's what Chitta is. Chitta does not do anything specific. It just it's the conduit between consciousness, Purusha, and Prakriti. It's the connector point. It's the port through which Purusha can plug into Prakriti. It doesn't do anything else, but it facilitates everything else. Fears come from the manas. Thoughts come from the buddhi. Chitta and Chitra, is there any relation etymologically? I wonder. I haven't examined it. What about ether? What about it? It's on there. It's called space. Ether is space. It's the most subtle of the tangible things. Okay, now, Devahuti asks Kapila, what makes prakriti change from balanced to unbalanced? Kapila says there's a 25th element. The 25th element is called time. So time is also something which is not exactly consciousness, but it's also not exactly prakriti. So it's a 25th factor, but he doesn't include it on the table of things that come out of the pradhan. It doesn't come out from pradhan. Time, so Devahuti says, if time exists, even when prakriti is perfectly balanced and without offspring, then what is it? It clearly can't be a manifestation of material prakriti. So see, her question is, first question is, here's prakriti, she's totally balanced. She's not doing anything. And then all of a sudden here she is unbalanced and all this stuff happens. What makes her go from this state to that state? Kapila's answer is time. The 25th thing called time. Devahuti says 25th thing. If time is what makes this prakriti become this one, then time must be existing before this one does. So time can't be something that comes out from this state. So what is it? If time exists when prakriti is perfectly balanced, then what is it? It can't be a manifestation of prakriti. So now Kapila explains. Time is understood to be a part of the powerful nature of the Supreme Being. So in other words, time is one of the Shaktis of the Supreme Being. It's one of the Shaktis of consciousness. It's to make things happen, to make experiences change. So it has this thing, this power to it, which we call time, which means the ability to change things. Time is understood to be a part of the powerful nature of the Supreme Being. It is fearsome for bewildered fools who imagine that they are in control of matter. Time is fearsome and dreaded to people who are trying to control prakriti because it keeps pushing them. It keeps making prakriti change, but they're trying to hold on to something that they like in prakriti. So fools don't like time. O respected lady, time, the force that unbalances prakriti and sets her in motion, is an indirect characteristic of the all-attractive. So time is part of Bhagavan's power. And you remember earlier when we heard Maitreya describe this, and Sutta and Shukadev described this, they said that Vishnu impregnates prakriti with time. He puts his time upon her, puts the time energy on her, and then that unbalances her and makes her start to do stuff. So this is why time is not counted as a material element. It's a 25th thing, but it's not a material element. It's a spiritual power. It's a power of consciousness, time, and it affects matter to change. Now, Devahuti is going to ask, since there's this thing, there's an element that's not really material, that brings up a new question in her mind. What other elements are not material? So she asks, what spiritual elements exist in the material world? What other spiritual things are there? And Kapila answers, the all-attractive spirit exists in the material world in two ways. Externally as time and internally as the soul of all souls. Individual souls also exist here, manifesting from the energy of this super soul. So there are further elements that aren't material. There's 24 material things. There's the 25th thing is time, which is a power of spirit. Then there are individual spirits, individual motes of consciousness, individual quantums of consciousness, individual beings, you, me, everybody else. And then there is the Bhagavan actually exists even in matter as the soul of those souls, as the foundation of the souls. So you can experience Bhagavan indirectly in matter in two ways. both by his amshas as the individual beings, me and you, and also as time, which is one of his powers. But directly, he's not here. Okay, so those are the spiritual. Yeah, we'll do this next section too. He's going to now explain. He gave an overview now. He said, prakriti is the matter. Matter is what you can do stuff with, prakriti. It always exists, but it has two states. One where it's balanced and unmanifest, and one where it's unbalanced and therefore manifests things. It changes from balanced to unbalanced by the influence of time. When it becomes unbalanced, it produces first a singularity, and then that singularity produces 24 things. Those 24 things get interacted with by a 26th thing, which is the conscious entity. Now, he's now going to give her more information about how the singularity produces the 24 things. Anil says, how is time associated with movement? Time is associated to change. Movement is a type of change. So next, Kapila explained how the singularity emerges and evolves into the 24 elements. That's interesting. Involve and evolve. The etymology is the same. The word is the same. But E is X, means changing outwardly. And involve means becoming a part. Coming in is involve, and evolve is like that. So how does these things evolve from the pradhan? Kermit asks, is everything within the domain of matter striving for that balance again? No, the balance just results when the entities get tired. Entities are striving for happiness. Entities are striving for pleasure. That's the fundamental drive of consciousness. It wants to experience exciting things. When it gets tired of failing, then it gives up for a while, and then the things become balanced again. Prakriti becomes balanced. It's just not being activated. If it was striving for that, then it wouldn't. Once it achieved it, then it wouldn't lose it. Okay, so Kapila is going to explain how the singularity emerges and evolves into the 24 elements of the universe. He says, the supersoul, Paramatma, uses time, which is divine and full of fate. Full of fate. That's why it's called Kala, and that's why Kala means destiny or fate. Kala is a word which means both time and fate, because time carries fate. Time is the ability for things to change. How are things going to change? It depends on the effect. The effect generates a cause through time. So the agent of karma and destiny is Kala, which is time. So the time is a potency which is carrying fate. That's right, Hetal. Kermit, if you just review what I told you before, the answer I told you before. So the supersoul uses time, which is divine and full of fate, to awaken Prakriti. You heard about this before. She becomes his wife. You heard about that before. Their conception is the singularity. Same story, right? Supersoul puts time on Prakriti, she wakes up, and then the result of their union is the singularity. The result of time being fully injected or fate being fully injected into Prakriti is that the little babies in there wake up. The little babies are all the jivas that were previously in there and got tired of acting. The resulting embryo is the great totality, the Mahatatva. The great totality glows with a golden effulgence that devours the surrounding darkness. It is the root of all universes, the first tangible form of Maya. Prakriti creates multiple universes. But the root of all the universes is something called the Mahatatva. Devahuti would wonder, is the great totality counted amongst the 24 elements? Is the Mahatatva somewhere on the 24 elements? Kapila says it is the 24th, the conduit of sentience. So Chitta and Mahatatva are synonymous. And the Chitta is the basis for all the universes. That means the ability for consciousness to look at prakriti is the basis for all the reality that happens here. Kala Sarpa, it means a fate snake. So it's when the serpent of Rahu and Ketu does something fateful in astrology. Abhishek had another question. Happiness is an emotion. Other emotions and 23 components are useless parts of prakriti as far as jivas are concerned. Wonder why prakriti was not created with happiness only. The emotion isn't the first thing that's created. The first thing that's created is, the first thing that exists is consciousness. Then consciousness has will to experience things. The result will be binary based on success or failure. If it experiences something that it likes, it feels happy. If it experiences something that it doesn't like, it feels unhappy. You can't... Happiness and sadness aren't directly created. They're byproducts of experience. And the other 23 elements are not inconsequential at all, otherwise they wouldn't exist, because the thing that you desire is something to experience. The emotion is the result of the experience. So you need something. I want to see a beautiful color. Well, I need color. Then when I see it, I feel happy. Or if I see the wrong color, I feel sad. Okay. Let's do this. I won't get distracted. The super soul uses time, which is divine and full of fate, to awaken prakriti. She becomes his wife. Their conception is the singularity, and the resulting embryo is the great totality, Mahatatva. The great totality glows with a golden effulgence that devours the surrounding darkness. It is the root of all universes, the first tangible form of Maya. Devahuti wonders, is the great totality counted among the 24 elements? It's the 24th, Kapila explained, the conduit of sentience. It is also known as Vasudev, because it is a clear, peaceful state of consciousness. Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are these four elements, synonyms for these four parts. Emotion is Aniruddha, Pradyumna is Buddhi, Sankarshan is Ahankar, and Vasudeva is Chitta. It is also called Vasudeva because it is a clear, peaceful state of consciousness in pure sattva, capable of comprehending the all-attractive. It can manifest clarity, focus, and calm like pure water. It evolves from prakriti when the all-attractive infuses her with the catalyst of time. Time enables action, kriya shakti, so the great totality evolves into doership. The kriya shakti evolves karaka, somebody that can do something. Ahankara therefore evolves. So the first thing that will evolve after, when the Mahatatva emerges, is the 24th element. When the 24th thing comes first. The 24th thing comes first. The ability for consciousness to perceive comes. Then it gets a sense of doership. Let me perceive something. Let me act. That's the 23rd element, the second chronological element, which is the ahankar, or the sense of ambition and personalness, things that you personally want to do. Ambitious doership interacts with the three qualities of matter. From sattva, it involves the mind. From rajas, it involves the intellect and instruments of action and perception. And from tamas, it involves the five tangibles with their five qualities. Thus, all 24 elements evolve under the motivation of doership. We heard this before. I gave you elaborate diagrams in part 2. We heard this at least twice before. Yeah, Scarum, pretty good. guess I'll save the next bit for tomorrow. You know, I always want to get to the... Every next thing is always really exciting, so it's always interesting, but you got to stop. We have to stop. The next thing he's going to talk about is how tangible matter evolves. Wait, did I get even there yet? No, the next thing he's going to talk about is subtle. The way it's going to break down, let me give you a look ahead. The way it's going to break down is, now he's explained how Ahankar evolves, and now Ahankar is going to interact with each one of these gunas to produce stuff. Next thing he's going to talk about is how the subtle things, the inner things, emotions and thoughts, get produced. Then he's going to talk about how the outer things get produced, which is the 20 of the 24 elements. Then after that, he's going to talk about how they all come together to form a being, just like you heard about before. Then after that is done with Sankhya. Then they're going to move on to other topics. She's going to ask how you can get liberated. Kapila is going to explain how to get liberated from prakriti. And then he's also going to describe activities within prakriti leading to heavens and hells. Through the process of reincarnation, he's going to explain that too. Bardo says, is Vishnu a synonym for supersoul, the owner of time and space, and Brahman is a synonym for Chitta? Vishnu is a synonym for the supersoul. Brahman is not a synonym for Chitta. You see how abstract Chitta is? It's just the ability for you. Yeah, actually, that's pretty good, Bardo. It's not, Brahman is not a synonym for Chitta, but they're very similar. They're very similar in the sense that Brahman is just the capacity for consciousness, and Chitta is just the capacity for consciousness in matter. Good. Okay, Samantha. I hope you have a good 2 days coming up, and I'm going to hit the brakes here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. No, I don't say delete it. When you scribble your questions, keep them. Then you get it deleted out of your mind. Triv, you're back. Nice to see you again. Come back tomorrow. Okay, guys, see ya.